Hey, welcome back, guys. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's Tuesday. All we ever know to say is Happy Tuesday. I'm Tamara Grand, and I'm going to invite my co-host, Barbara Reed, on 30 of No Brush Required. 30 following 29, which was last week. Say hi.
I'm
Hey,
here.
you're here. Yay.
Yay.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Really good. How are you?
I'm really good too today.
Yeah.
Sunny, warm, and spring's in the air, so can't complain.
It's gorgeous here. It's not warm. It's quite chilly, but it's absolutely stunning out.
Hi, Christina. How are you? We've got lots of friends hopping on right now. Hi, my
Oh,
sister
yeah.
told me it was snowing in Ontario yesterday, that there was a blizzard across the street. She couldn't see the house across the street because there was a blizzard.
Yeah. We had a little blast of winter just to come back because you know what? We put the, those brushes you keep in your car?
Yeah.
They got put away. So that
Oh.
usually means that, we'll get another snow. We'll get another snow, but what the heck?
Well, I took my snow tires off last week, which usually means it's going to
Oh,
snow.
you guys are going to get so
Yeah.
pummeled.
And it's going to be all my fault. So West Coast people, if it snows now, you can just blame it all on Tamara.
It is. It is. Hey, Lisa. I saw Lisa yesterday. We got together for a coffee
I saw
and
that.
a painting transfer, and boy, did we chat up a storm for a couple of hours.
And I see Danielle, and I see Douglas, and Lisa, and
Rena.
Rena. Everybody's here. I saw Nadine, and I think
Bonnie.
Rob's here too. I think I saw Rob. So we're doing something unprecedented for No Brush Required in our long storied history of 30 episodes. We've never had a guest come back for a second week. And we're going to do that today because Rob Szot was with us last week, and the conversation was fabulous and flowing. And we had lots and lots of questions that we didn't get time to get to. And I think he mentioned that he was starting to get questions on his own feed or messages after as well. So I'm going to grab him if he's there still. What's he eating in the green room? That should be one of our questions that we ask.
Eating in the green room. What would he be having today? I think just more back bacon on a bun.
Or more bagel. Hey, Rob.
Hey, he's got a hat on.
Must be cold in California.
I think it's 70, yeah, so we put hats on out here in LA.
No, but that is
yeah.
a toque. Do you guys call them toques down over there?
No. I've never heard of that before in my life.
That is a real hoser toque. So
That's a Canadian word.
That's very, oh my God, strange brew, right?
What were their names? Bob and Doug McKenzie.
Yeah, the McKenzie brothers, right?
Yes, so funny. Rick Moranis and what was the other one?
Eugene Levy.
No, not Eugene Levy.
No.
Dave. No. Oh, somebody has to know. Somebody
Dave,
Google it real fast. No,
the round-faced guy. Dave.
Round-faced. And his brother was in Chilliwack. The band.
I mean, that's Dave.
Somebody's got to look it up.
Somebody knows somewhere, I'm sure.
If you figure it out, pop it in. We'll take
really important.
Hey, that's our last jelly donut. That's
yeah. And that blowed up real good.
So funny, dude. Dave.
I know.
Moranis.
Rick
Moranis.
No, I already said Rick Moranis.
All right.
No,
okay.
We'll get it.
Okay, somebody either that or I'll figure it out at 2:30 tomorrow morning, and I'll text everybody.
Please send me a text message because that is going to drive me nuts.
2:30 a.m.
And the thing is like Googling it. Yeah, I'm sure you could find out in 2 seconds. But like, you got to, it's getting a little dusty up there, and so
that's not satisfying.
Okay, and all right, we'll figure it out.
Satisfying. Anyways, look, we've got somebody from Chile. Oh, I think she's coming to your workshop. Did you have somebody from Chile?
Did you know that, Rob? Does Rob know that we got people signing up after they saw you last week from overseas?
And I'll tell you why. I did the interview with you guys last week, and about a half a day later, the workshop sold out. So, yeah, I'm really. I mean, I really don't know what to say. Like, I'm so pleased, and I'm very grateful that people took the time to sign up. I know it costs money. I know there's travel involved and everything, and so I'm really grateful that people signed up for it. And I think I owe a lot of that to you guys in the interview that we did last week. I mean, it was great. It was really great. I don't know
It's
what
our
else to say about it.
global
Like, I'm
reach.
really
It's our
flattered.
global reach. Like we are.
Right, right, right.
This is a big show that you're on here.
Just wait
The
till it
biggest
goes
show
into
I've been on.
syndication.
Yeah.
We'll send you residuals when it comes into syndication.
Terrific. We'll probably have to pay Bob and Doug McKenzie some sort of money for mentioning them, right? So.
Oh my
Yeah, you're
gosh, yeah.
right.
Well,
Yeah.
if we show beard, I think that will count. Like if we hold up a, I don't know, Molson or something like that.
I have to show you something. I bought this because I was going to wear it today, but I ended up not wearing it today. But I was going to wear that
Oh, wow.
today.
That's awesome.
I just
Can't you
decided to go with
drape it
something
or
a little less loud. But yes, I was going to wear that today. But I'll wear it to the workshop in New York. So
Fabulous.
Yeah.
we'll celebrate Canada properly.
Excellent.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we will.
Excellent.
We will.
Well, we last week when we left, we talked about having more of a Q&A this week because we didn't really get to answer everybody's questions. And one of the
Sure.
big things that kept coming behind the scenes was we didn't get around to talking a lot about your work.
Yeah. We
Um,
That happens. Like, I'm happy to talk about my work. Certainly, it's hard for me to be a bit of a self-starter with that.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I just, it's not that I feel uncomfortable about talking about myself, but it's just not something that I choose to kind of to do, to start on my own. It's just not
Yeah.
something I'm,
Yeah.
just some
Well,
silly hang up that I have.
How about this? I'm going to ask you a question about that, something you're currently doing that I've been seeing on Instagram. And while I do that, I'm going to ask anybody who wants to pop on and go live with us to send a request. So you know that little thing that pops up on your screen that says request to go live? This is the time to hit it. That means that we'll invite you to come on and you'll have a little screen. You'll share a little screen probably at the bottom, sorry. But then you'll be able to talk to everybody while we're here. So Rob, the question I'm going to ask, so you guys go ahead and invite yourselves or request to invite, and I'll get to that in a minute. I wanted you to talk a little bit about the vessel work that you've been posting lately that I didn't realize that it was collage, and I didn't realize it was your at the end of the day when you get home just for something fun work, because Instagram is really hard in those little squares to get
I understand.
size of things, right?
Yeah.
So I just wanted you to talk a little bit about, your recreational art making at home in the evening.
Well, I have a number of exhibitions coming up here, starting in June. Well, it actually started back last month in New York, but my next exhibition is in June in San Francisco with the Jack Fisher Gallery. And the next 4 shows I have are all solo exhibitions, and they sort of fall one after another. So kind of in a panic, I thought, well, I could do paintings, I could continue to paint, but my paintings take, in my opinion, a tremendously long amount of time to finish. And I get very frustrated sort of in the process of making that work, especially if it's all I'm doing. And I've really enjoyed the freedom that I feel when I do works on paper. I feel like there's something a little less precious about it for me. I feel like I could be more of myself and experiment more, really with not nearly as much of a consequence as I have when I'm working on an oil painting. I mean, you buy a piece of linen and it's huge, and you spend months putting paint on this thing, and then you just end up wanting to put your foot through it, which is I think a totally reasonable emotion to have. I think it's cathartic in a lot of ways to kind of destroy your work and move on from it. But I don't recommend it. I mean, at least try to fix it. You know what I mean? Because there's nothing quite as depressing as like seeing the refuse of like a painting that you've been working on for the last month. You really just want to light the whole studio building on fire. But that aside, the works on paper, I feel like do allow me a lot more freedom in terms of my decision making, and in terms of thinking, well, look, if it doesn't go right, then I'll just cut it up and I'll turn it into something else, right? It's a lot more transformative than an oil painting. So I started doing works on paper probably, I'm going to say 3 years ago, when a fellow painter friend of mine, Louis Cologne in New York, told me what a monotype was, and I had never heard of that. I mean, I haven't ever gone to school or anything like that. And I really became obsessed with it after he showed me what it was and how to do it. And then I ended up buying an etching press for the studio, and I really kind of got full into doing monotyping. And then it built up from there. And currently I do what what I'll end up doing is I'll do a monotype, and then I'll do collage with mixed media, typically crayon and gouache and a little bit of charcoal. And the current series I'm working on, in my off time, as you put it, is I'm exploring the idea of these jars that I've been making, these vessels that I've been creating. Yeah. They're obviously still very abstracted, but the thing I like about them probably the most is that, unlike my paintings, like, they offer there's a real border there with that work. Like, there's a real stopping point with it, which is interesting for me because I've never had to deal with that in my paintings, or really in my earlier works on paper. So to sort of self-impose that stopping point really has challenged my decision-making process in terms of, like, what the composition is going to look like, because it does have that end point, and, like, you really have to take that into consideration. Now, I realize a canvas ends eventually, obviously, or a piece of paper ends eventually, obviously, but to me, like, there's a real physicality about the stopping point of one of these vessels. And I say vessel, or I say jar, in a very loose way. I think I picked that particular object because it can be, you could do so much stuff with it, right? Like, there's really no definition of what a vessel is or what a jar is. And plus, I like to think of them as being tied to history as well. I've always been interested in the Grecian jars, the Egyptians. Like, they've always seemed to be very decorative pieces. And I don't know, I just like it. It just kind of tickles that. I love history, and I've got a bit of an itch for it myself. And so every time I kind of tie my own work into some historical aspect, like, it just becomes that much more satisfying.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
and I do them at night, and I do them when I'm in my house right now where I do that work. I'm sitting at the little tiny desk that I do that work at.
Yeah.
And it's funny, you wouldn't think doing more work would be sort of a wind down, but it is. It's nice. I like it. It loosens me up quite a bit after a day of just, staring at these paintings that are all half finished at this point.
Yeah.
So are all the vessels collage? Sorry, are all the vessels collage?
Yeah.
Really?
Collaged with scraps of older work. Typically stuff I find on the floor at the studio, or old monotypes that I'll cut up. But they're collaged, and then I'll do crayon and gouache on top, just to kind of bring everything more together.
Yeah.
Because typically collage is like, they can be quite messy, and so it's important to kind of bring it.
Yeah. But I think the interesting thing too is, you talk about the edges having definitive edges, but the interesting thing is the vessels, they're curved, which makes them very different from those definitive edges on your canvases that you're working on. And it also change things a little.
It plays into, like, I think my paintings and I think my works on paper as well, they all have this kind of bulbous, organic feel to a lot of the shapes that I'm making. And I think putting those organic shapes into a larger organic shape, it does something interesting for the work, at least for me. I don't know if I can properly explain it, but there's something very satisfying about it, certainly.
Yeah.
So.
It contains everything. So you almost have like chaos inside this really definite edge.
Right. And I think it forces you, when you look at it, to kind of try and render it in your mind as something tangible, right? You look at it and you say, oh, it's meant to be a jar, or it's a vessel. It's kind of a very broad description of something, I understand. But I think it does force you to put it into some terms of reality, which is not something I'm used to doing with my work. But I enjoy the challenge a lot. And I mean, clearly, like, when I could sit down and start something in the afternoon or the early evening and work, relatively late into the night, but get it finished in a day. I mean, you can't beat that. There's nothing quite like starting and finishing something on the same day. I really like that. It never happens for me, but I like it a lot. So
okay, I'm going to interject something here. Dave Thomas. And then we could get on with our lives.
See, he's the Wendy's guy too. That's the name of the Wendy's guy as well. And so I get confused. But you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Now,
it just kind of came to me when you're talking about your
No. Did you cheat, or did someone tell you, or you figured it out?
No, I swear to God. Okay. Nobody told me. I swear.
We're going to be face to face here in a couple of months. I'm just letting you know.
Don't lie.
I'm going to ask you
I'm not lying.
Clear your browser history.
Thank you though for that answer, but you're absolutely right. Dave Thomas, ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah.
one of the McKenzie
Sorry,
brothers.
go back to the art.
Well, I do have somebody requesting, and I want to make sure she really wants to come on. Her name is Brenda. Brenda, is that?
Sure.
Does anybody know Brenda? I don't know Brenda, but I'm going to pull her on.
If it's the Brenda, well, there's only one Brenda I know, and she lives in New Orleans, and she came to the studio in New York probably 2 years ago, and I got to meet her there, and she's great. Yeah, bring her on. Oh.
Hey,
How
are you doing, Rob?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good.
She's a fabulous painter. She's a great artist. She's done. You were just involved in some charitable event, right? For
the New Orleans Museum of Art.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's nice to see you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, Brenda. What's your last name, Brenda?
Are you ready? Saporito.
Okay.
It's hard, I know. It's not as easy as Rob Szot.
Right, Szot.
No.
Yeah, that's an easy
No.
one. Sure.
Well, I didn't know about your workshop, apparently.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh, now I'm a little bit embarrassed. I should have texted you. I'm sorry. That's my
I
mistake.
think you should have. You've been outed.
I don't know what to say. I'm sorry.
You have to do another one.
Maybe I could talk to the people that are running it, and maybe they can squeeze you in there if you're interested.
Maybe so.
All right, I'll get in touch with them. I'm sorry,
Okay,
Brenda. That's my mistake.
So look, here's my question for you. When you're doing your collage, are all those papers, are they monoprint papers that you're tearing up or cutting up to make the collage? And what type of paper are you working on?
The paper I use is a Reeves heavyweight. It's a titanium buff. I think it's 175 grams, I think, or GSM, whatever that means. Is that grams? Yeah. I think so. But I get it from Renaissance Graphics in Pennsylvania. And I just buy like 100 sheets at a time. So they're a really good company. So you might want to look into them. And yeah, typically the collage pieces that I use are from older works, and they will be of that same paper. So there'll be these abandoned projects, etchings sometimes that I've torn up or just stepped on a bunch of times at the studio, and then I'll just re-rescue them and try to reuse them as best I can. So yeah, it basically is like a snake that eats itself, right? Like you're working and then you destroy it and then you rework it. It's Lazarus coming back to life kind of a deal.
Well, I'm sitting here looking at one right here.
Oh yeah, which is
you have one?
Let's see. Beautiful.
She came to the studio and she had her pick and left with a bunch of stuff, which is great. I mean, I'm very grateful for that as well. But
I see you and your fantastic work every day.
Listen, I appreciate you so much, and meeting you and having you at the studio, a couple of Southern people getting together, talking in our funny accents like we do. And it was just it was really great. And it's great to see your work on Instagram and to continue to follow you on social media as well. And listen, I'll talk to the people that are running okay. All right.
Yeah, that's right.
You got witnesses, Rob.
Don't get mad at me. I'm sorry about that.
I'm not going to be mad at you. I'm going to give you another chance to redeem yourself.
I'm really going to do my best for you. I promise.
All right. Y'all have a great visit. I love talking to y'all.
It's so
Thanks
great to see
coming.
you.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so I was going to ask, what do you use to attach everything? Like what medium or adhesive?
I don't even know if you could read this anymore because it's so crusty. It is Lineco pH neutral adhesive, LINECO.
Okay.
And it is the greatest acid-free glue. It dries clear. It dries relatively quickly, and you can get it anywhere. You can get it on Dick Blick. Oh, here, I have the gallon. I have the gallon version of it here.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, it's great. It's great stuff. And the crayons I use are those guys. You know, the French
Caran Dash.
Neo Color One.
Caran Dash. They're actually made in Switzerland.
Are they?
I
Oh, I thought
I
they were
bought some
You
in
crayons.
mean
Zurich.
these ones, Rob? So Rob and I have this in common.
That's
Do you
right,
have
the
both
same ones.
kinds?
I
Do
have
you
I
have
have
like
bought.
the water soluble and
Yeah.
the
No, no.
water
You know why I don't have the water soluble ones? Because
because they're water
I find
soluble?
that those. You're right. Well, I find that those crayons that if you because you asked me about the kind of jeweled tones I get
Mhm.
on
Well, the
what I
turquoise
do.
that you're using.
Yeah, is if you just rub your finger really hard on the crayon after you put it on the paper, it ends up getting this really waxy kind of translucent quality to it. And I don't. I mean, maybe the water soluble ones do the same thing, but the sort of aggressive way that I treat
Mhm.
these crayons, like they hold up, I
Yeah.
think really beautifully, and like you will hurt your finger, like you end up rubbing your
I
fingerprint
have
off of your index finger.
no fingerprints left on these
Good,
for,
then you're
for
yeah,
collage.
and but really, just really, if you just rub it enough, it does something really wonderful too, especially like the turquoise and the blues. Like it
So
really does a number on
so
it.
you're using the Neocolor one, which is the water resistant,
Right?
to get that gorgeous turquoise?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
Okay, I'm impressed. I
Yeah.
gotta
Just
start
re-
coloring stuff when
just
we get off this
really
call.
like this particular color is a
Yeah,
really good
Yeah.
example.
I love
Like
that one.
if you just if you're just more aggressive with it. Now, I mean, the paper I use is really heavy,
Yeah.
so it doesn't rip or anything. But
Hmm.
if you're just really aggressive with it with your finger, it just does something cool to it. It's like at the workshop, like I'm going to go over the not only the techniques that I use in oil painting, but the medium that I've kind of created for myself, and
Hmm.
it sort of does the same thing. Where if you apply a thin enough layer of that oil paint and then
Mm.
scrub it really aggressively, it does something to the paint,
Hmm.
and then when it brings out the paint that's underneath it, it becomes like this very translucent, kind of
Hmm.
vibrant jewel tone that you talked about. Which
Yeah.
yeah, so.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a really cool tip.
It is.
That's a tip from the caveman painter who has, you know,
And then I step on it, right? After I
right,
do
exactly.
it. Stomp on it.
If I could show you the number of works I've done with footprints on it, I think you'd really be shocked. It's so funny. I I was showing some work
Keep
uh,
talking. Keep talking.
Yeah, keep talking.
at an art fair in New York. This is a couple of years ago when I first started doing works on paper, and it was the work on paper. Oh no, you know what it was a printer's art fair, right? So you had all these people in there that are very serious. Like printers are very serious people,
Hmm.
right? And they take their work very seriously, and their details are just impeccable, and everything is clean and it's beautiful. Like the presentation is 90% of like that. Like they're very focused on it. And you would know that if you ever got ink on somebody's blankets on their etching press.
Yes.
Right.
That's a no-no.
That's a no-no.
Yeah.
So I was showing at this art fair, and I walked in, and I was sort of marveling at all these beautiful woodcuts and etchings, and then you came to my work, which is just wrought with like fingerprints, and there's a footprint on there, and I didn't know whether to be like super happy about that or really embarrassed, but it was very, very evident. Like there was some guy who had no clue what any of this was about, just sort of jamming these things into, it was pretty remarkable. Hey, how are you?
Hi, Rob.
Nadine's here.
Yay,
Good to
Nadine.
see you. Good to see you again. I had a question, but you girls asked it already.
We did.
But I was wondering about your collage. So I guess I have a question for you. Do you collage on your oil paintings?
I don't. I think I tried to do that one time, and it seemed like whether because of how I paint or maybe the medium that I use, it seemed like the paper sucked up a lot of that, and it became greasy, and I didn't feel enough confidence that the adhesion would stay, and I thought this thing's going to fall apart in a year, and I just didn't want to put it out into the world. I mean, I'm sure it would be an interesting thing to do, but it's not something that I've done. But a lot of people do think my paintings are collages, and they're not. It's all oil and charcoal on linen.
Well, I knew that you used collage, but I actually thought that you used it in your paintings, not just on your paperwork. So that's why I asked, because I was kind of like, how do you do it, right?
Well,
But
I was thinking about getting some composition board. I was going through one of my old de Kooning books, like I do sometimes, and he did a lot of oil on paper mounted onto something called a composition board, which I'm still not sure what that is, but I assume it's like a hard board, like a masonite or something.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about maybe going into that realm where you're putting oil to paper, and I think maybe then I'd be a little bit more confident in introducing collage elements to that and sort of mixing them. If I'm going to mix them both up, both techniques up, I think I would want to do it on paper just at first, at least, to make sure I'm not, going into some territory where these things I'm going to get a phone call in 6 months and say, hey, I bought this thing from you, and now it's all over my kitchen floor.
It
You know what I
oozed
mean?
out of the frame.
Yeah, I don't want to get that phone call. So.
You can just pretend you're Banksy.
Yeah.
Oh, right,
It was intentional.
Yeah.
I'm real anonymous now that I've sat here for half an hour talking about everything I do in the studio. Yeah, nobody will be able to find me.
Yeah, I had a thought about what you just said about attaching it. You could almost seal both sides with an acrylic polymer of some sort, then paint oil on top of one and adhere it on the bottom of the other side, because the oil wouldn't go through the acrylic. That could work, actually.
Will you come to Los Angeles and show me what you're talking about?
Send me a ticket. I'll be there.
Okay, yeah, no problem. A bus ticket, I'm sorry to say, but.
So, and I do have another question quickly, and then I'll head out here. Your paper works. Do you put oil sticks or anything on top, or are you using just water-soluble materials? Like I know you just talked about the crayon, which I have, but do you actually put oil sticks or use any of your, like, when you're working on paper?
No, the only thing I use in terms of materials that I feel like I could paint with is gouache, and I typically use the Holbein gouache.
Yep.
And but never, I've never put oil to paper. I think maybe I tried that early on in my career, and back then I really didn't know what I was doing, as opposed to now, which is I only kind of don't know what I'm doing. So, but when I put oil to paper back then, it seemed to not respond the way I wanted it to. I think I might have just been using the wrong paper, but no, oil sticks are really tricky for me because I like to work rather quickly in terms of being able to layer oil paint, especially. And with oil sticks, they seem to take forever to dry. I mean, it's just pure pigment, and I don't know how to get them to dry more quickly. So I've tried to use them before, but I mean, it just doesn't really kind of fit in with the kind of speed I like to work at. So.
And even the thin layers take forever. Like I was working up there with that orangey, yellowy stuff, super thin with like a wedge shaper. So scraping most of it off, and a week later, it's still tacky.
It's still wet, right? Yeah, and then you end up sticking your paintbrush in it with a different color, and then the next thing you know, you've got a lot of brown or something. And as much as I like the thought of having something in my hand and being able to really kind of just add marks and draw onto a canvas, like I just cannot get past that slow drying time, and it just screws me up every time I try to do it. So,
thanks. I haven't used them yet, and I it's kind of like this weird, because I'm painting right now in acrylic, so I haven't done what Tamara's doing, and I'm a little bit leery of like venturing there on top, right? Because I'm not sure. Yeah.
I mean, with oil paint sticks, just be ready to kind of not do anything to that area for a year or more.
Okay. Wow.
When I paint, though, if you want to get into oil painting, we're going to discuss this at the workshop as well. But if you want to get into oil painting, like I use a walnut oil with an alkali drying resin in it. It's a Williams. What's it? Williams something? You could find it on
Graham's.
Yeah, that's it. Graham. Yeah. It's such a great product. I thin it out with some low toxicity mineral spirits, but if you paint thinly enough, that stuff dries in a day. It dries like an acrylic does. And even if it's not fully dry, I'm getting into the workshop stuff now. We're not going to have anything to talk about come September.
Oh no.
Lots of stuff. Well, I'm sure.
If you go back to it a day later with a paper towel and you put a little bit of that medium back on that paper towel and you start kind of scrubbing into it and taking away some of that pigment and really lightening it up enough, it does something really interesting to the oil paint. Now, that's all I'm going to say. We'll get to that at the workshop. And then after the workshop, when everybody knows my secrets, then we can come back on Instagram and we can reveal them to the rest of the
We're all
world.
doing
Yeah.
vessels.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Okay,
Oh,
well,
God.
it was good to see you again, Rob.
Nice
I
to
wish I
see
had
you.
more. I was like, the girls asked all my questions, and then I was like, forget it. I'll come on anyway and just ask you something. But it's great. I'm super excited about New York.
It's going to
I'm
be really a lot of fun. And thank you so much for signing up. I really do
yeah.
appreciate it. I do. And
Uh,
if you have questions after this, and this goes for anybody, like I'm available to people. I certainly,
Thanks.
I don't close my doors. I like to meet people, and I think answering questions also helps me kind of better understand what it is I'm doing, and then it kind of refines my presentation for September, which at this point is just going to be me staring at people going, why?
No, it'll be fantastic. I worked in oil, but that's like, I'm going back 7 or 8 years. I haven't used oils, so it's going to be interesting. I'm excited about it.
Bring your acrylics if you want to try oils. It's great, but we're going to get into a lot of discussion, and then I really want people to feel free to apply what they know and how they paint and the way they like to paint, and then we can have a discussion about how I work and how that maybe can fit into with what you're doing. I'm planning on learning as much as you guys. You know what I mean? Like, I want to come there and learn myself.
I have a question for you, actually. So I have oil paints. Do they have an expiration date?
Do they go rancid?
To know.
If you know what, if you leave the cap off, look, I have oil paints from 15 years ago still, and they're bad if you can't squeeze them out of the tube anymore. If they're too hard to squeeze, I think they've gone off. Otherwise, I think you're all right. Yeah.
I'm going to bring paints for all of us, for Tamara and Barb and me and Joanne and I. I'm going to bring enough paint because I've got paint and they don't have any oils. So I'm going to bring it all. I have it. I'm going to just pack another suitcase.
Isn't she nice?
Well, we can play. Then we can just do whatever, right? We don't have to worry about it, right?
Yeah.
So,
And I don't want you to worry about it. That's the thing. I don't want anyone going into this thing worried about like preconceived notions of who they are as a painter, or what they do is going to fit in with it. Look, I have an agenda, right? And I have serious things to talk about, but it's not going to exclude anybody, right? It's not, there's no exclusion there.
Awesome.
We're all sort of doing the same thing, and so it's nice to get together. And it's so funny because community for me has always been something that has been a bit of a mystery. I'll be honest with you. And it's not something that I intentionally avoid. It's just not something that I intentionally get myself into, right? I'm working at the studio and I have what I have and I'm doing what I'm doing. And I don't really want to bother other people or get my life involved with other people. I mean, for no other reason than I have my own thing and everybody has their own thing. But coming together with this workshop and meeting everybody like this, it's really kind of turned me around on all of it, and I'm really enjoying it. So I'm very grateful to you guys for signing up, and I'm certainly looking forward to it. So
yeah,
thanks. It's great talking to you. Thanks, girls. I'll see you soon. Okay, bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
We had a question go flying through the comments.
A couple of questions about traveling with oil paints. Are you allowed to bring them on the airline?
I don't know.
Nadine thinks so.
I don't know.
Are they flammable? I don't know. I think those are Google questions.
Listen, call your airlines, Google. I don't want to give anybody information that I'm not 100% sure of. I mean, I don't know. I'm not even going to say what I think. I think you'll be okay. But I'm not going to say that. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know.
Another question that went flying through was about talk about your first layers when you started painting, I guess. I read it very quickly.
So somebody said, I don't think so about the oil paints on an airplane. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know either. Listen, there are a lot of great art supply stores in New York.
Yeah.
The pricing isn't outrageous like you would think it would be in New York City. You could just buy basics. Look, if you go to Soho Art Materials and buy Graham oil paints, great pigment load. It's an excellent, excellent oil paint. It is so affordable. It's such an affordable paint. Like, I think their cadmiums are like $8, which, I mean, look, it's money, I understand, but it's not outrageous money, right? So if you can't bring your oil paints on a plane, bring what you can. We'll get it sorted out. We'll sort it. So
We're not worried.
Okay, good.
I am so not stressed
Do you
about
look worried? I'm not worried.
I'm not worried.
You don't look worried. You guys never look worried about anything.
We're
Except
not.
for your snow
No.
tires and the snow and
Just
getting
our
the Tim
snow
Hortons on time for a donut or what. I don't know. I don't know what you
Oh,
Canadians
boy.
are up to.
You have just caricatured us on time back to the igloo.
Yeah,
I'm gonna start
that's
talking about Rush here in a minute. You're like, I haven't brought Getty Lee up in these conversations.
Getty Lee.
I'm sorry. So the question was about
I think about first layers. I'm guessing how you start, or what are your underlayers like, or what's like the first mark you put on a canvas?
The first thing I do, and I actually just started doing this. Prior to maybe a month or so ago, I would start every painting, like if you could imagine like a Bryce Martin painting, where you have a lot of these very sort of veiny black, sinewy lines running. I need some sort of structure to build a composition on. I am a great problem solver, right? What I'm not really great at is starting stuff. Like a blank canvas to me is a much more horrifying prospect than a canvas that I've been struggling with for like a month, right? Because there are problems to solve. There are things to latch your eyes onto and say, okay, I'm going to build off of this particular part of the composition. But starting a painting for me is a rather difficult venture because there's just nothing to solve, right? It's just a blank canvas. So what I'll typically do is that I'll build almost like a structure on the canvas itself. And I used to use black oil paint for that, but now I've switched over to black gesso and a wider brush because I wanted to see what the painting would end up looking like if that structure was something more substantial, right? Wider, a bit darker, and would that come through in the final composition of the painting? Like I wanted to see if I could bring that initial structure back out after painting on top of it. And so that's how I'll start a painting is I'll just take a relatively wide brush and just start, it's very architectural in a lot of ways. It's just like lines. Oh, it'll be interesting to kind of segment that particular part of the canvas off at that size, and then we can get a bit more complicated down here. And these things typically have no bearing on the final product of the painting. So it's not something that I'm looking at going, here's how I want this painting to look, or here's how I want this particular work to be structured in the end. I just need something, I need to create a problem for myself, essentially, is what I'm doing. And that normally helps start that off. And then after I've done that, and that's, 5 minutes, really, then I'll start adding color to the work. And it's important for me, I would say in the first 2 or 3 days, just depending on the size of the canvas, is how I like to cover the entirety of the canvas early on. And again, I don't think it's so much about a thoughtful covering, right? I think it's more about just getting something down and not thinking past that. Because the things that I think past that is, okay, well, I've covered this canvas. Now, here's problem A and B and problem C. And I like how that relationship is working out, and can I exploit that and make it larger, make it and then how is that going to affect this other, like, it's very kaleidoscopic in nature, where you have problem A that turns into problem B, C, D, and E, and then it's a struggle, right? And it's hard to get everyone to play well together, but that also adds a lot of velocity to the painting, right? Like you're putting out a fire here, but it's starting 3 fires over here. Right? And it's never boring, right? It's it's frustrating, certainly, but that is very typical of how my paintings start and how they progress. And really the finishing, people say, well, how do you know when a painting is finished, or how do you get to that finishing stage? That is very much just a very personal, instinctive thing, right? You look at it and you say, yeah, I mean, maybe that didn't work out the way I wanted it to, but as a whole, like, it says exactly what I was after. And that's the funny thing is that I don't know what I'm after, right? I don't know what I'm after when I'm working on it. I don't know what I'm after when I'm finished with it. I don't know what I'm after when I'm sitting in my room, in my little studio house or whatever it is. And that's okay. I don't think you have to have an answer for those things. I think if you could look at it and go, look, I did what I wanted to do with this particular work,
Yeah.
it's okay then to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Very typically, a year, 2 years in, if I see that work again, I just want to grab it and pinch it and say that's
Kill
not
it.
what I wanted. But that's you growing. That's
Yeah.
you growing
Oh yeah.
past your work, right? Like you're growing
Yeah.
past that, and
Yeah.
and so there's always going to be a little bit of a tension and a little bit of not embarrassment, but your spine gets a little tight when you see
Disappointment.
something from 10
Yes.
years ago. Of course.
Disappointing. Like there's almost like a that's not what I was. That's yeah.
I don't ever want you to be disappointed, though. That's the thing. You have to take this journey that you're on and stretch it out into a timeline, right? And you have to be comfortable with that timeline as best as you can be. Because without those silly works that you did 10 years ago, you wouldn't be where you are now, right? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah.
And plus, I think it's great if you could look at an old work and feel like, wow, I've come a tremendous, like I've come
Yeah.
way far from that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, don't be embarrassed, and don't tell your clients that you're embarrassed either. Don't do that. Don't be like, oh my God, you bought the shittiest painting I've ever done. I can't believe you bought this thing. No, don't. That's not a good sales tactic.
No. So do you work on a series, or are you focusing on one piece at a time?
Well, I typically do one piece at a time because I tend to have a lot of spillover. Like my brain can't compartmentalize things very well. Like if I'm working on 3 paintings at once, I'm afraid they're all 3 going to look like the same painting, right? Because, I like this idea on this one. So naturally you're like, oh, I'll try it on this one as well.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes boring. Right. So I typically do one thing at a time. But that being said, my workload currently, and when my workload gets, heavy like it is now, I do have multiple paintings going on at once. I think I have 6 paintings that I'm doing right now. So,
well, that's actually a nice segue. And somebody just asked the question: how do you deal with upcoming deadlines when you have?
You know what? I heard somebody tell me recently that pressure is a privilege, and it is.
Yeah, no kidding.
It really is. It is nice that somebody wants something from you, and it is a privilege that someone is putting demands on your time. I would much rather have that than the phone being silent. You know what I mean? You're gonna look. The important thing is that you're working through both periods, right? If it's quiet, you're working. If you've got a ton of shit you got to finish, you're working, right? So it doesn't change. It doesn't change what you do day to day. But I look at pressure as and deadlines as I love them. I get excited about them. I get excited about exhibitions. I get excited about commission paintings. I look at them as real challenges on my own ambitions and my own ability to get up in the morning and say, look, we have to go after this today. And again, you have to have that attitude no matter what your current state is in terms of attention from other people. It's not about, I think if you work during the quiet times, you're preparing yourself for the times when the deadlines become much more serious. Not only will you have a body of work that's available, but you will have gone through those early stages of your career, those embarrassing stages like we talked about, and you'll be much more prepared for those challenges and that pressure. I look back when I was 28, I had a solo show in New York in Chelsea. It was the biggest show I'd ever done. And I was absolutely terrified. And I actually think the gallery made a mistake. I think they offered me that show thinking I was somebody else. And I'll tell you why. I had a meeting with them face to face, and I had my slides, like this is back in the time of slides, and I had my slides with me, and they looked at my work and they're like, this is not the, and then they stopped. And I was like, what's the confusion there? I really think they thought I was someone else, which is so strange to look back on, right?
Yeah.
But they went through with the show. I of course went through with the show, and it did okay. It didn't propel me into the upper echelons of the art world like I was convinced like it was going to do. And I look back at those works now and I think, man, at 28, had I just been a little more prepared and a little more refined and a little more ready for the loud times, had I worked harder I was 28. I mean, come on, I was in New York. What do you want, right? Like, I
Yeah.
want to go out, I want to drink, I want to go meet people. Like, give me a break.
Yeah.
I want to go smoke 100 cigarettes and feel like garbage the next day. I mean, it's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But had I just focused a little bit more, I think it would have just made a lot of difference. You know what I'm saying? And so I just want to encourage people to say, yeah, look, the phone isn't ringing. I'm cursing a lot more today than I did last time. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
This stuff isn't going the way I want it to go in terms of my public and who I am in the art world. Those times, I think, will come if you work hard enough for them and if you focus enough on what you're doing. And what you're doing is, there's an honesty in what you're doing, and there's you've eliminated the separation between who you are and your work. I think those times will come, and I think it's the quiet times that you need to prepare, you know, for those loud times. So I'm sorry if that's an elongated answer.
No,
it's probably a very easy question.
Great answer.
I just look back on those times in my life, and look, I don't regret them. I had a lot of fun, and they were great, and you know, but I just, if I could just go back and just say, man, listen to me. Like, I know it's fun to go to bar or whatever, but like, just stay in the studio just a couple of extra days, you know? Because you don't think, like, when the phone's ringing, you don't think, well, I have a deadline, or I have exhibitions, and I have all these things to hang my hat on. But, you know, when they show up, like, you need to be as prepared for them as you possibly can be. Even if they think you're somebody else and you're confused as to why your work isn't what they were expecting. And God, what a weird meeting that was.
Did you ever have an inkling of who that other artist was that they thought you were?
Not a clue. And the thing is that it was so weird because my meeting was with the owner of the gallery, but the person that I had been in communication with and the person that came to the studio was the curator, the director, I guess, for the gallery. So it was either they weren't talking or there was something wrong with their communication, because clearly this person that had shown up to the studio had seen the work I was doing. And I don't know if they just didn't communicate it properly to the gallery owner, because she seemed awfully perplexed by the slides that I had put in front of her. Oh, my goodness.
That's a great story.
It's an awesome story.
Really, really strange.
I just invited Rena on. I think that she's here. Rena, come on, Rena. Come on down. You're the next
Tamara,
contestant.
Our young friend Jeffrey got a job, so he can't be in today.
Okay. Good for him.
Rena.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Another Southern voice. I heard someone say, "Oh,
y'all."
Good to see you, Rob.
Hi, Rena. How are you?
I'm fine. Listen, I'm the one that keeps asking some questions in there about your, what I consider very distinctive organic shapes. And that is you clearly have an affinity with them. And I would love you to talk about that a little bit.
I think a lot of my work that you see now is directly, I think you draw a very straight line to, if you look at the background of an Egon Schiele painting. Now, there's a particular painting that I like a lot. It's called Agony, which I know is a very kind of dark and slightly disturbing, but you know, he was sort of a dark character. But it's a painting of Egon Schiele wrestling essentially with Gustav Klimt, right? Like, that's what that painting is about. And it's about him and his mentor and kind of breaking out of the shadow of this great painter that he idolized. And if you look at the background of that painting, I think you'll see a lot of my painting in that. And it's weird because I never reference any Schiele books. I hope I'm saying his last name right. I think I am. I tend to reference abstract painters' work much more than the work of German expressionist painters. But Schiele was really what got me started painting. And I love the idea that subconsciously I've always stuck around in his camp long enough to where that background of that particular painting and a lot of his other oil paintings has really influenced my work. Now, if you look at his paintings, there's a lot of angular, almost cubist kind of references, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sharp lines, pointy elbows, hands that look like, you know, sticks or whatever, but the backgrounds are organic and soft. And we're going to talk about this at the workshop as well.
The workshop.
There's a painter, her name's Emmy, and she is coming to the workshop with Christina. Christina's a great painter. Emmy's a great painter. Emmy's paintings, there's something so familiar about her work. When I look at it, I see my early work in what she's doing now. And what I want to talk to her about in particular, and I think that this will go for the whole workshop, is I want to talk about the edges of your paintings. I want to talk about the edges of the color fields and how they relate to the rest of the composition. I think if you focus on the development of what I call the edges of your shapes in the composition, I think it brings a softness and a sort of an ethereal quality to the paintings. If you focus on, I mean, those, and man, it's funny because I never talked about this, but edges, it's just something that I've thought about for 20 years. Just the edges of the work. And like, if you look at Chile's paintings, I think his treatment of those edges is so spot on. Yeah. And it has become this really it's one of those it's the mechanics of my paintings that I never really get into, but it's that concept of taking care of the edges is so crucial to me. And it's so funny, ladies, I never talk about it. This is the first time I've ever talked about it. And even in my works on paper, when you're scrubbing away at that crayon, you're creating that edge, which is almost like a powdery snow. You know what I'm saying? It just blends into everything else, even though it maintains its own shape and its own weight. That edge allows it to go on to the next thing. I'm trying to really refine how to get that explanation across. But I mean, edges for me has been, it's just not something I ever talk about, but it's been so fundamentally important in my work. And I want to talk about that with Emmy, I think, especially because I think her work is fabulous, but I want to talk about her edges. I hope I don't know if she's on or not, and if I'm embarrassing her, I apologize. I
love that.
I just see it. I see it, and I think let's talk about your edges.
Yeah.
It's just weird. It's just something that, as you can see, like I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
I never talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about it.
It doesn't come up much, but you know, the juxtapositions and the overlapping and you know, it's just sort of very subtly showing through there. Very, very difficult, I would imagine, but clearly so intentional on your part.
I do that because I want these paintings to tell a slow story, right? And I don't know if I said this on the last episode when we discussed it, but my primary intention for these paintings, when they're confronted, is I want their stories to unfold in a very slow way for people when they're looking at it. And I want those stories to be interesting, and I want them to be long-term. Like I want them to be drawn out, because I think you end up forming a relationship with a painting if it's able to tell you a slower story, right? And something that you're interested in. And then you begin to get very attached to that story, at least like with paintings that I see, like a really great Francis Bacon painting. Like it's not just a dog running through grass, right? There's a story there, and the way he handles the paint application allows for that story to really unfold over time. I mean, Basquiat said it best when he said, I cross out words on my canvas because I think it makes people read them, right? Like he crosses them out so people will read them. They'll want to know what they say.
Right.
And so with my paintings, like there's a lot of mystery, there's a lot of shrouding, there's a lot of covering up with just the slightest indication of something underneath, right? And I think that I think you focus more, and I think it becomes more important to you because you have a relationship with this painting now. I know, it's weird, right? My mom looks at me really funny every time I tell her. I'm like, Mom, listen, like this painting, and she's like, well, no, Robert, it's red. And I said, no, it's not just red. Well, Mom, have you ever seen Francis Bacon use pinks before? It's amazing.
Well, collage, you just might look at it once and say, okay.
Right, and I don't want
Right.
that.
As you
I'm not into that. We live in a very disposable culture that moves so fast, and you're just so
Yeah.
willing to just move on to the next thing as rapidly as possible. And I'm not that person. I don't want my work to be that way either.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not saying it's going to change the world, and people are going to, stare at these things in awe, like you're in the Rothko Chapel in Houston or something like that. But that's the moment I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're in the Rothko Chapel. And you're like, well, these are just black paintings. And then it's like, wait a minute. No, they're not, right? They're not. It's an experience and it's a story. And it's like, shit, like, I don't even know what to say about that. You know what I mean? I don't know if you've ever been there or not, but it's like, it's crazy. It's crazy. I went to, I was in New York and I went to the Gagosian on Madison Avenue. It was a couple of years ago. It was a Francis Bacon late painting show. And they had it's 2 floors, and they have a square room on the second floor. And I walked into that room, and there were his triptychs, right? There must have been probably, I don't know, 15 paintings in there. And I felt paralyzed. I couldn't believe I was being confronted with this. It was no longer painting to me. It was an experience is what it was. And I just looked at my girlfriend, who also was slack-jawed as I was. And I was like, I just can't believe that this stuff exists. It's just like it's from another planet. It's like, it's unbelievable to me. And I like that. And I want that. I'm sorry. Am I still answering your question? Or am I totally off the rails here?
I mean, that's art. You're creating a whole other world. It's a deeply emotional experience.
Yeah.
And I don't want those things to be just thrown away. I don't want them to just be passed up, right? There's a story there, and if I can get that story across to strangers, that's what I want to do.
I love that.
I love it.
Mara, I hate to say this.
I know. We're brushing up against an hour.
And yet it feels like 5 minutes, honestly.
I know.
Well, you guys are great. I mean, you really give me a platform to sort of ramble, and I really do appreciate it. So
It's
We
been
love
fabulous.
it.
Thanks so much for another hour of your time, and we're really looking forward to September. And lots of questions flew by, and I will put up everybody's Instagram handles who were on the call today, and a few other details that I meant.
Bonnie said part 3.
I
think we need Rob back before September.
Yeah, we'll have him back.
Too many
I
months
will
without
commit
Rob.
to that. Certainly, I'll commit to that for
Yeah.
sure.
All right.
You want to maybe do something in June, like closer to my show in San Francisco,
Yes.
and we can talk
Perfect.
about how that's going. That's great. I'm
Fun.
happy to do that. And thanks again, and guys, thank you for signing up for the class. Please, I'm available to you on Instagram. Send me a message, whatever you want. But thanks again. Really, I do appreciate it.
Well, it's
All
been
right.
such a pleasure.
It
All right,
has.
guys.
So
Thanks
much
Nice to
so
fun.
much,
see you.
everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for coming.